Hello. We'll be going through today the overall farm program update as to what's been going on throughout 2020. And obviously this year has been a unique year for everybody in the dairy industry, including the farm program operations. Today we'll be going through our updates regarding animal care and antibiotic stewardship, as well as our two newest program areas, environmental stewardship and workforce development. And with that, well, just as a reminder, this is what our farm looks like today with those four program areas in place. And this is truly our on-farm social responsibility program, so it does encompass each of these areas, which is what farm was originally put in place to do, is to communicate those assurances in these program areas to our customers and consumers that the dairy that they purchase is coming from a good place, which is what we all know. And so just for a brief update regarding some of the adaptations that we've had within 2020 due to COVID, recognizing that in order to maintain the health and safety of you all as our farms, your workforce, in addition to our co-ops and processor participant workforces, we did make adjustments to our program cycles as a whole. Typically, we function on a every 3-year cycle, which would include animal care, environmental stewardship, and workforce development. But due to our recommendations of temporarily putting on-farm evaluations on a hold due to COVID, we have made the decision to extend our program cycles by a full year. And so whereas previously these animal care 4.0, environmental stewardship 2.0, and workforce development 1.0 would have been in place through the end of 2022, they are now going to remain in place through the end of 2023. And so what that means as a whole is obviously some adjustments on the actual evaluations themselves between the second party and third party verification for animal care. These are still recommended to be temporarily halted at this point. We have had anywhere between 10 to 20 of our co-ops and processors that have continued operations as they've felt safe to do so. So if you've had an evaluation in the last few months, that is possible. But overall, as a program, it's been our recommendation to kind of put a temporary halt on things to make sure that everyone is safe. With that, we've also extended our corrective action deadlines and have moved all of our evaluator trainings to a virtual platform. We've actually entered into a new agreement with a new vendor to conduct our trainings, which was great. They were very equipped to do virtual trainings, and we feel that our evaluator network has really appreciated the ability to remain engaged, but also keep up with their certification and training. All that being said, as much as we've limited our on-farm activity, what we have recognized is still that need that if there are animal care concerns and issues that do arise, we have worked with our third-party vendor to initiate the willful mistreatment protocol if and when that's been necessary. So that's really been kind of the broader updates and adaptations that COVID has caused in the animal care space. Thankfully, the environmental stewardship program area does lend itself nicely to doing things in a more virtual setting. So while the program extension has been adapted like the other program areas, we have seen more maintenance of those evaluations themselves over time, over 2020. But again, the data that's been collected will be from 2020 through 2023, whereas previously it would have gone through the end of 2022. And then for workforce development, in March of 2020, right before the crux of COVID hit, the NMPF board had approved our second party evaluation for workforce development 1.0. And unfortunately, we just really never got that out the door when the world came to a halt. And so what we're doing within workforce development is using this time to really ramp up our resources, getting all of the database aspects of workforce development underway, and then also working on what we've committed to is version 1.1 to making those evaluations effective and meaningful for smaller operations. And so while it's been maybe a shift, a pivot that we've had to do within the farm program. We are excited to share a lot of the new and innovative things that we've been doing over the last few months. And so one of those areas is something that we are exceptionally excited about is our new database provider. We have transitioned from our previous vendor to an organization called New Insights. They're based out of Denver, Colorado, and have a strong history of work within the agricultural space. They pride themselves on being innovative, customer focused, and really uphold our values in the farm program of providing customer satisfaction, problem solving, as well as that broader customer support. Our goal long term with the database is to not only make it a usable tool for our participants, so our co-ops and our processors, but also actually make it a resource for our farmers. So that you all have access to the data on a routine basis, can make it a benchmarking tool for yourselves, and really allow for you to own the operations on the data and use that to the best of your ability. We've also looked into and recognizing the technological advances within the dairy industry, how we can connect further with those other on-farm softwares, the dairy comps, the PC darts, and other technology on-farm that's readily available that can actually help enhance the evaluation process and continue to provide that transparency and assurances on-farm around the everyday operations on social responsibility. Additionally, we've taken this time to, with limited travel and a lot of desk time, to be able to really bolster the resources that we've been creating for our collective network. And here is just a spattering of those. It's really been focused on those operations for farms, or resources for farms, resources for our participants themselves, to make sure that we are implementing the program across the board in a consistent manner and with the highest level of integrity. Additionally, we've had a lot of change in vendors this year, and our newest vendor has really just upped our ability to engage and provide really professional resources that look sharp and can help in so many different ways. So if you haven't seen some of these resources, please feel free to visit the nationaldairyfarm.com website and take a look around. And if you see something that you like, let us know. And if you see something that maybe isn't there, then please let us know, and we'll be able to work with you to develop those in the future. Additionally, we've taken this opportunity to really bolster our network and our partnership with industry partners. One of those ventures was a collaboration with us, Animal Ag Alliance, Elanco, and Alltech to develop a video known as the I Care video. And this is a 10-minute video that is really targeted for our dairy farm employees to help them to understand their true value of their role in the animal care space. It does also provide some insight as to some of the strategies that our anti-ag folks are trying to use, in particular the undercover approaches from animal care. And with that, the video is fully in Spanish, but also with English subtitles, and it will generate a certificate at the end of watching that would satisfy part of our stockmanship and handling training expectations in the animal care program. Additionally, for the consistency across our program implementation, we've developed participant modules for our co-ops and our processors to go through. Oftentimes, our evaluators that are out in the field maybe are not the same people that manage those teams at the cooperative or processor level. So we felt that it was important to make sure that everybody was on the same page, understood expectations and the requirements of implementation of the collective farm program, and give an introduction not just to animal care, but also our other program areas in antibiotic stewardship, environmental stewardship, and workforce development. Finally, we've also continued that stakeholder engagement in a variety of different ways. We are thrilled to have a new staff member, a communication staff member, Leona Bernstein, who has really helped us to reinvigorate our communications efforts. You know, a lot of what we're trying to do within the farm program is continue to heighten that awareness, allow for folks to interact with us on a routine basis. And so we've created recreated an evaluator newsletter as well as a stakeholder newsletter. And I will put a shameless plug here. We are doing a quick combos series from November through beginning of January, really focused on reaching out to our farmer community. This was an idea that came out of our 20-member Farmer Advisory Council that said, we really just need to see and hear kind of quick snippets around what is the farm program, get some questions answered, and allow for that open dialogue. And so those, please look for information on that to come, but those quick conversations will be happening from November through January on a variety of topics, and we'll be streaming those live through Facebook Live from our National Dairy Farm Facebook page, as well as via Zoom. Then additionally, we've also taken this opportunity to, again, identify and engage with monthly connections with that Farmer Advisory Council, as well as our evaluators. We were really missing everybody, to be perfectly honest. And so allowing for us to connect on a monthly basis, if not more frequent, at the beginning of COVID with our evaluators and our farmers was essential to really making sure that we are providing all of the information and resources that we possibly could. And this was where we partnered very strongly with our NMPF side of things to make sure that we were addressing what the needs of the industry were. And additionally, we have done a variety of different webinars and conversations with various industry partners, as well as working through our traditional networks of our NMPF Dairy Defined and our Hordes articles to make sure that we're communicating as much as frequently as people need to hear us. And so now to transition just slightly more to focus in on the animal care and antibiotic stewardship side of things. Two main updates in the animal care space is last year we had talked about the need for filling the gap in the calf and heifer ranch space. That is a space within the dairy industry that has long gone without any type of formal quality assurance program. And what was recognized is that area of the industry does touch a variety of our industry partners, including beef, veal, as well as the Dairy Calf and Heifer Association. And so those four organizations came together about a year ago to determine what next steps needed to be done to provide those assurances throughout the supply chain in the calf and heifer space. And so we are pleased to announce that we are almost done with a full program manual, and that we will be looking forward to the development of some online farmer trainings that will accompany that calf care quality assurance. Additionally, we've taken this opportunity, and as we committed to last year, in providing some further governance updates to our animal care structure, we've gone through a variety of adjustments within the animal care. What was formerly known as the Technical Writing Group will now be referred to as the Animal Care Task Force, and we've done recruitment in particular demographics of veterinarians, processors, as well as academia to fill the open seats that existed. Those will be established and will be the group that will be working on version 5.0 of the animal care program. And additionally, we identified that truly with the expansion of some of the needs in the antibiotic stewardship space, that really from a governance standpoint, we needed some folks dedicated to the antibiotic stewardship realm. And so we did establish an antibiotic stewardship task force that is being collectively managed between Beverly, Jamie, and Michaela Hanselman on the regulatory team. Additionally, as a broader NMPF initiative, we did outreach to all of our cooperatives to identify who the members of our Animal Health and Wellbeing Committee will be in the future. It had been a list that had continued to grow and hadn't been reviewed in a while, and so we did provide that opportunity to our network of cooperatives. And in addition, we re-updated and revamped the Innovation Center Animal Care Committee. So those are three key areas that we had committed to in the past, and with some time dedicated now, we're able to really get those in place. And you will see future communications as to who those folks are, and if you want to be further engaged with those individuals, you'll be able to know who they are and how to reach them. One of our most exciting achievements in 2020 has been the renewal of our certification under the ISO standards for Farm Animal Care 4.0. We were the first ISO certified animal care program internationally that we are aware of, and we are the first program to be recognized again for this certification. Thank you again to everyone for your efforts and work within the farm animal care program to make this certification achievable. And then finally, with the Animal Care 4.0 progress, this obviously may look slightly different than it would have in a normal year, but you can see kind of the trends of the animal care evaluations from Q1 to Q3. Given that we were expected to be close to 8,000 evaluations at this time, we're really hovering at that 2,000 mark, which is okay given everything that's been going on. You can clearly see where our recommendations and the height of kind of the COVID era started. So we are 75% below what our pre-COVID targets were from a cadence of evaluations, and that was really the rationale for why, particularly on the animal care side, we decided to extend the evaluation cycle. But in those 2,000 evaluations, we have been able to identify those trends around the areas that we are going to need to provide some additional resources and tools to help our farms meet those expectations and standards. Most of those corrective actions that are being generated within the evaluations conducted to date have really continued to be focused on protocol development, continuing education, as well as documentation. In the continuous improvement plan arena, that would include those permanent treatment records, as well as the protocols around calves and the stockmanship continuing education expectation. And then additionally, those mandatory corrective actions are those that have carried over largely from version 3 and continue to include that annual signature and review of our herd health plans and the VCPRs, as well as continuing education for our non-family employees. And so this continues to be a focus area for us. And what we're really excited to see, though, is that given these have been focus areas of the program since early on, we are seeing that these corrective actions, when they have been generated, are getting resolved in a very prompt fashion. And so with that, I'll turn things over to Jamie to provide an antibiotic stewardship update.
Thank you, Emily. This is Jamie Jonker with the National Dairy Farm Program, and I'm going to give a brief update on happenings in antibiotic stewardship over the past year. I always love presenting this first slide. This is the percent of bulk milk tanker trucks that test positive for antibiotic residues. As a reminder, all tanker trucks must be tested for antibiotic residues in accordance with the Pasteurized Milk Ordinance. Going all the way back to 1996, we had a very low incidence of 0.104% of tankers testing positive. Moving forward over 2 decades, that's now down to 0.009% of tankers testing positive. That's about 1 out of 11,000 tanker trucks, a very small number indeed. And importantly, as we all know, if a tanker truck does test positive for a residue, that milk does not enter the commercial system. We also have an improving story that we can tell on dairy cull cow tissue residue violations. As you can see here, over the period of 2014 through 2019, we've had a reduction in dairy cull cow tissue residue violations by about 40%. That's a pretty dramatic drop in such a short period of time. Bob veal tissue residue violations are another success story for our dairy farmers. We see a drop here from 2014 to 2019 of nearly 70%. There are a couple of factors that do play into this specific drop on Bob veal, probably the largest being the change in the availability of neomycin from an over-the-counter antibiotic to an antibiotic requiring a prescription, including if it's used in milk replacer. And that change did occur between 2014 and 2015. But you'll also notice a decrease in most of the other drug residues as well. And so again, this is a good story that talks about the important role and responsibility that dairy farmers take in the judicious and responsible use of antibiotics on their farm. However, I do have to add that the entire story is not always rosy, and I think it's important for us to also acknowledge points that are not as positive. And that is out of all of the residues that are found in animals at slaughter, dairy cull cows and bob veal represent almost 80% of those values for 2019. That means that we're 80% of all the residues that are found in dairy animals, beef animals, but also poultry and swine and small ruminants like sheep and goats. And so while we have a great success story here over the past few years, we need to remember that we still have more to do. We need to get our overall tissue residues in alignment with the great success that those other sectors in the livestock arena have done. Finally, I have a couple of updates on some of the regulatory elements that are happening in the use of antibiotics. Last year, FDA requested comment on zero withdrawal antibiotics and milking frequencies on U.S. dairy farms. NMPF conducted a national survey and also was able to analyze farm data for this. The reason that FDA wanted to look at farmer attitudes about zero-day withdrawal is because they make assumptions that antibiotic drug companies are required to utilize when they determine when withdrawal periods should be set. FDA has not updated this in more than 20 years, and there's been substantial change in the industry in that time. By being able to utilize the farm data, we were able to update information to FDA about the frequency of milkings, including regional differences between 2 and 3x, and something that really didn't even exist 20 years ago, the introduction of robotic milking systems. And so by being able to anonymously utilize the farm data, we've been able to provide updated information to FDA in this important arena. The other thing that we were able to do is through that survey that we conducted online, we submitted more than 168 pages of individual dairy farmer comments about what they view in terms of zero-day withdrawals for both milk and meat. Finally, I want to mention, and I've mentioned this probably every year for at least the past 6 or 7 years at annual meeting, over-the-counter antimicrobials are going away. There's very few that are left in the over-the-counter class, but those remaining few in the next several years will no longer be available over-the-counter and will require prescription. FDA issued a draft guidance requesting that these pharmaceutical manufacturers voluntarily move their medically important antibiotics from over-the-counter to prescription. And NMPF commented on this. It is a move that we have supported for quite a number of years and fits very well with the farm program and that veterinary oversight through the VCPR, the Veterinary Client-Patient Relationship. In our comments to FDA on this topic, we were also able to use the farm data to look at the VCPR data. We analyzed data on a regional basis and on a size basis to see if there were differences in farms that had a VCPR during the time of their evaluation, so that FDA and the dairy industry might be able to focus outreach to those farms about the changes in OTC to prescription. Generally speaking, we all know that we have a high rate of VCPR. Generally speaking, dairy farms have a great relationship with their veterinarians. And during the initial farm animal care second party evaluation, on average, about 80% of the farms have a signed VCPR with the dairy farm owner and the veterinarian. That means we have 20% that don't have it at that time. That's relatively consistent across regions of the country and relatively consistent across sizes of farms. Although we do find that smaller farms were slightly less likely to have a VCPR at the time. And there were some regional differences, particularly in the Northeast and Southeast, with a slightly lower VCPR rate across all sizes of farms. But this is some of the important things that we can do with the data that comes from the Farm Animal Care Program. It can provide us real-time, accurate information to be able to share with FDA and others in government so that when they are making decisions on regulatory actions, that they have a full understanding of what the modern day dairy industry looks like. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole to talk about the last two parts of the farm program.
Thank you, Jamie. And now we'll turn to farm environmental stewardship and workforce development. I'm Nicole Ayash, and I'm the Senior Director of Sustainability Initiatives here at NMPF. So first, a little bit about where we've been with farm environmental stewardship this past year. In terms of enrollment, through September of 2020, you'll see on the graph that we've had over 1,300 farms enrolled in the program.
Some of those farms have gone through an evaluation more than once, bringing our total number of evaluations to over 1,600. And that's all thanks to the 36 participating cooperatives and processors in the FarmES program. You'll notice in the graph that the number of farms enrolled in the program this year is lower than last year. That is, of course, due to COVID this year, which did change activities for our farms and our evaluators. As Emily mentioned earlier, FarmES does lend itself well to remote evaluations, so we do expect the number of farms and evaluations to grow as our network becomes more comfortable with conducting evaluations on a remote basis. Earlier this year, we also launched version 2.0 of the FarmES program. This contained updates to the scientific model that powers FarmES. In particular, we can now account for the benefits of solid-liquid separation, as well as solar and wind generation. We also updated the crop emissions factors to reflect current production practices, and now display results by gas type, which can be important for supply chain reporting. We also added a metric from the U.S. Dairy Stewardship Commitment on the use of written nutrient management plans. To accompany version 2.0, we updated some of our key resources. In particular, we updated our user guide and data collection sheet to make evaluations easier for both our second-party evaluators as well as our farmers in the program. We also launched a guide for conducting remote evaluations, in part in response to COVID, to really support our network in conducting those remote evaluations. Now to give you a sense of some of our ongoing activities and upcoming projects. This year, we launched an online evaluator training for FarmES evaluators. The training is online, self-paced, and free, and it's available to any farm evaluator, whether or not they're currently in FarmES. For those listening who know of evaluators interested, please encourage them to email the farm inbox to enroll and to get more information about the FarmES training. As of October 1st of this year, the training did become a requirement in order to conduct FarmES evaluations. So going forward, evaluators will need to be certified through the FarmES training. We're also in the process of developing new resources. So first, to accompany the nutrient management plan metric that I mentioned earlier, we are developing state-by-state fact sheets that cover the nutrient management regulatory requirements for dairy farms. So dairy farms of all sizes in each state, as well as highlighting the opportunities for cost share or financial assistance to support producers in getting a nutrient management plan or in other advancements around their nutrient management practices, as well as information on technical assistance in their state and region. We're also working on an evaluation prep guide that can be shared with farmers in advance of an evaluation that talk more about the FarmES program, as well as the documents and data that are required as part of the evaluation and what they can expect as far as the experience goes. I'm also pleased to share that we are currently working on strategic planning for FarmES. Our goal is really to develop a short and long-term roadmap that we can share on our website, publicly through multiple venues, that really talks about how we see the FarmES program evolving over the coming years. And we need this evolution for a few reasons. First, we want to ensure the program continues to meet the evolving needs of our supply chain, so those customers and retailers who want to know more about dairy farm sustainability. We want to make sure FarmES remains the unifying platform for the dairy industry and meets those supply chain needs. We also want to look critically about how FarmES is currently helping producers with continuous improvement, and really identify what are the ways in which we can improve the program to better support producers in continuous improvement. We also want to make sure the Farm-ES program grows to fit growing industry priorities captured in the Net Zero Initiative and the 2050 environmental goals. And towards that end, we're collaborating closely with the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy. And as part of the strategic planning, we are holding input sessions with various stakeholders to get feedback. So far, we've held a session with our Farm-ES task force. We've talked with our Farmer Advisory Council, and we've also had a session with 9 key dairy buyers to better understand the perspective of retailers and brands. We're also working on a number of database enhancements with our new provider, New Insights. For Farm-ES, one of the first priorities is a summary page for co-ops and processors to aggregate their Farm-ES data. We'll also be embedding the random sampling protocol into the database. That also makes it easier for co-ops and processors to implement the Farm-ES program. And more to come on the database side as we continue to advance the strategic planning process and better understand the IT needs that we have in Farm-ES. Now I'll turn to farm workforce development. This pillar of the farm program was launched in 2018 and focuses on HR and safety best practices. Working with our Farm Workforce Development Task Force, we developed a second-party evaluation tool to share information and resources about best practices related to HR and safety, and track adoption of those best practices on dairy farms over time. That second-party evaluation tool is also useful for providing supply chain assurances. So really addressing that growing interest that retailers and brands have in better understanding the labor activities going on dairy farms. We piloted the tool on 45 dairy farms and also put it through a public comment period. The NMPF Board of Directors approved it as a voluntary part of the farm program that participants can use with their farmers as they see fit and as works best for them as an organization. So this is very similar to how Farm-ES operates in that it'll be up to the participants to determine how to use the Farm Workforce Development Second-Party Evaluation tool. To accompany the evaluation tool, we have begun the process of developing a second-party evaluator training. Those sessions will launch in early 2021. We're also continuing work to develop additional producer resources, and that's through our Resources Working Group, a group of subject matter experts, farmers, co-op staff, and others from across the country to really help advise us on what are the needs when it comes to resources, and help give us a review of our draft materials and ensure that everything we create fits the needs of our producers. That group met once already this year, and we've already started work on putting out new resources that I expect will be launched here in the next few months. Second working group that we have underway is our evaluation working group. This group will be tasked with creating a version of the second-party evaluation tool that's better tailored to smaller operations. So this really came out of feedback that we got through the pilot program and through public comment, where several participants noted that the evaluation tool contained best practices that are really great, but they didn't necessarily see how that best practice could work for them as a small operation, or knew exactly where to turn for resources that fit their needs. So we are going to work on what we're terming version 1.1 of the evaluation tool that contains that tailored guidance and information for smaller operations. The timeline for that is, our hope is end of 2021, it will be available for use. And finally, I want to highlight a recent research report that we put on our website just this summer. So last year, we conducted a nationwide labor survey with the Texas A&M University Center for North American Studies. So the researchers there really conducted the research, and now we get to see the report and better understand the labor practices going on dairy farms today. The survey was sent to a random sample of 3,000 farms. And through that, we have a few learnings that I'm highlighting here today, but I do hope that you'll take the opportunity to go on our website and view the full report. So first, 40% of the responding farms hire non-family labor. And of those farms, we asked additional questions about their HR and safety practices and learned, for example, that dairy farms offer a variety of non-wage benefits, which should come as no surprise to most of you and matches our learnings from previous surveys. Those benefits include paid vacation leave, housing allowances, incentive pay, and more. We also asked about the days off per week and found that the average was about 1.4 days off per week for the responding dairy farms. We did find that there are areas of opportunity. For example, pre-employment screenings like reference checks, address checks are currently being underutilized by dairy farms. So what that means is that we could potentially be putting ourselves at risk and hiring employees who are not best suited for the job. And so what this means for farm workforce development is we can take those learnings, take that understanding of areas of opportunity and develop additional resources, program materials to help support our farmers in continuous improvement in ways that make sense for their operation. We're also going to be taking this data and information and putting it out there in the world through various communications materials. So for example, we're working on a Twitter campaign on developing an infographic that can be shared widely via social media. We're also looking for opportunities to highlight the survey in various articles. For example, an article recently came out in Hordes that talked about the survey and highlighted some of the results. We're also going to be putting out an accompanying research paper on turnover. So the researchers at Texas A&M took a look at the characteristics of dairy farms that had low turnover to better understand, could those aspects of those operations help reduce turnover for other operations? What learnings can we take from those that have low turnover? And how do we take that information to best plan for improvement over time? So that accompanying research report will be available on our website, and we'll make announcements about it here in the coming months. And with that, thank you all so much for your time. Thank you for letting us give you an update on the farm program. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any additional questions or concerns. Thank you.